Salam Shalom Peace. I'm Azra Hussain, President of the Islamic Speakers Bureau of Arizona, also referred to as ISBA or ISBA. Welcome to this month's Ilm Circle. Tonight's topic is titled The Place of Miracles in Judaism through the Holiday of Hanukkah and will be presented by Rabbi John Linder. John Linder is the senior rabbi at Temple Salel in Paradise Valley. He was born in Buffalo, New York, and after graduating as an American Studies major, he spent 6 years as a community and labor organizer for Massachusetts Fair Share and the Hospital and Healthcare Workers Union. John and his bride Nancy returned to Buffalo, where John served for 10 years as an executive in his family's business. At the age of 41, John moved to Jerusalem with his wife and son, where he entered his first year of rabbinic school at Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion. He received a master's in Hebrew letters in 2002 and was ordained in 2003. After serving as an associate rabbi in Chicago, he moved to Arizona in 2008 to serve as a senior rabbi of Temple Salel in Paradise Valley. Rabbi Linder counts his blessings for the love of his family and his friends, and the daily gift to sanctify God's name by bringing the sacred texts of Judaism and other faith traditions into our everyday lives. Welcome, Rabbi Linder.
Hello, my friends. This is Rabbi John Linder. I'm blessed to serve as the senior rabbi of Temple Salel in Paradise Valley. And Temple Salel is blessed to be a wonderful friend of the Islamic Speakers Bureau of Arizona, led by its founder and director, Azra Hussain. Azra is such a wonderful, ambassador for the Muslim community. And I would say that Azra brings out the best in all of our faith traditions, reminding us of the common ground upon which we stand is to bring compassion and love and peace into the world. And ISBA leads that beautifully. I have the honor of talking about the holiday of Hanukkah, which begins this evening, Thursday evening, and would like to perhaps give you a different way of hearing and learning about Hanukkah, or maybe it's the first time you've learned about it at all. So allow me to share my screen for a moment. Actually, I'll be taking you through this short presentation. So first of all, for those that are looking for the 45-second version of Hanukkah and who are the Maccabees, well, let's start with that. Well, there you go. That is that's the short version of our story. And let me get back to actually where this story comes from. And actually, and I'm gonna go off the screen for a moment. You would expect the Hanukkah story to be found in perhaps the Hebrew Bible. It's where we find all of our other holidays is in the Hebrew Bible. And I just happen to have a copy of it right here. This is it. And if you look through the pages of this, the 5 books of Moses, the prophets, and the writings, the 3 parts that make up the Hebrew Bible, you have to take my word, you would not find a word about the Maccabees and the story of Hanukkah. So where, you might ask, would you find it? I'm glad you asked. And actually, we can give thanks to the Catholic Church for including the story of the Maccabees, the 2 books of Maccabees, in what's called the Apocrypha, the hidden books. So the Catholic Church went beyond the bounds of the Hebrew Bible to include a number of Jewish writings, one of which is the Maccabee story, without which we would not have this story. So there is an irony and actually a beautiful story of faith traditions that help to provide for one another. So let me just read a little bit about that story. First of all, just to note that the story of the Maccabees, and this is a story that takes place over 7 years. So starting at 167 before the Common Era through 160. And it is a battle of the few being the Maccabees, the father Mattathias and his sons, the most famous being Judah, against the many, the Syrian Greek army. And we can look at the story of the Maccabees as the first recorded battle for religious freedom. So again, as you've got a rabbi speaking for the Islamic Speakers Bureau of Arizona, we are still looking to make sure that each of our respective faiths understands one another so that we can support one another. And if you were to go to West Point, you would see the bronze busts of a number of military leaders throughout history, one of which is Judah the Maccabee. And although I have never seen this in person myself, hopefully one day I'll get a tour of that. Why Judah the Maccabee at West Point? Because it's the first example of guerrilla warfare. You have to be pretty strategic if you only have a small army against the powerful, in this case, Syrian Greek army. So again, thanks to these books being preserved in the Apocrypha, let's read about the story, just so you've got some of the essential information. And I'm just going to read. So this is at the end of the 7 years. Then Judah and his brothers said, "See, our enemies are crushed. Let us go and cleanse the sanctuary and dedicate." And this is where the name of the holiday Hanukkah comes from. It is the Hebrew word to dedicate. And when they're talking about the sanctuary, it's the second temple in Jerusalem, the second temple that was built during the Persian Empire under Cyrus, that we were able to rebuild our temple that stood from 586 beyond the Maccabee battle in the Roman period. And so that's what we're talking about. That's the temple. And to continue reading, thus they finished all the work they had undertaken early in the morning on the 25th day of the 9th month, which is the month of Kislev, in the 148th year. They rose and offered sacrifice as the law directs on the new altar of burnt offerings that they had built. All the people fell on their faces and worshiped and blessed heaven, who had prospered them. So they celebrated and dedicated the altar for 8 days and joyfully offered burnt offerings. They offered a sacrifice of well-being. Then Judah and his brothers and all the assembly of Israel determined that every year at that season, the days of dedication of the altar should be observed with joy and gladness for 8 days, beginning with the 25th day of the month of Kislev. So we have here some familiar components of Hanukkah. How long is it? It's 8 days. When does it begin? The 25th of the month of Kislev, which happens to be, as I am recording this, it's going to be this evening. So this is Thursday night, the 10th of December, and tonight is going to be the beginning of Hanukkah. So we have some important pieces, but then in the second book of Maccabees, we have a little more information. Now, Maccabeus and his followers, the Lord leading them on, recovered the temple and the city. So remember, this is the temple in Jerusalem. It happened that on the same day on which the sanctuary had been profaned by the foreigners, that happened to be 7 years before, at the beginning of this battle, the purification of the sanctuary took place. That is, just in case we forgot, the 25th day of the same month, which was Kislev. They celebrated for 8 days with rejoicing. Now we have some additional information. In the manner of the festival of booths, remembering how not long before, during the festival of booths, they, being the Maccabees, had been wandering in the mountains and caves like wild animals because they were in battle. Therefore, carrying ivy wreaths, wands, and beautiful branches, and also fronds of palm, they offered hymns of thanksgiving to him who had been given success by purifying of his holy place. They decreed by public edict, ratified by vote, that the whole nation of Jews should observe these days every year. So there we have it. That's the story of the Maccabees and this rededication, Hanukkah. Yet it seems like they're talking about something that may be familiar to those that are listening to this recording. The Festival of Booths is another name for the holiday of Sukkot, which happens in the fall, right after our high holy days, after Yom Kippur. And it reenacts the experience of the Israelites wandering in the wilderness, the desert, for 40 years, living in tents, in booths, and waving what are called lulavim that are described in this. So curiously, it seems like these 8 days, which is the length of time of Sukkot, the Festival of Booths, is really what they were reclaiming. They missed the opportunity when they were in battle. They've now reclaimed the temple. It's a different time of year. It's a few months later. So they're gonna celebrate it then. Why not? But there seems to be one thing missing. And I am curious for those that are listening to me right now. Is there anything about the holiday of Hanukkah that you may know that we have not heard in these stories that talk about where the holiday came from? Well, if you are wondering, where's the light? Where's the miracle of the 8 days of Hanukkah? Well, if you miss that, then we're going to figure out where that comes from. It's not a part of the original story. And this is, I think, a wonderful, wonderful way of looking at all of our faith traditions. In this case, I'm talking about Judaism, where we have the ability to be creative, to look for different ways of telling our story. So let's take a look at, and this is about some 600 years later, the rabbis that wrote the Talmud, which is a collection of interpretations of the Hebrew Bible, a different way of looking at our holidays. In this case, the rabbis are looking at the holiday of Hanukkah in a boldly creative, different way. Let me read it. Our rabbis taught on the 25th of Kislev, we commence the days of Hanukkah, which are 8, on which a lamentation for the dead and fasting are forbidden. For when the Seleucids, this is the Syrian Greek Empire, entered the temple, they defiled all the oils therein. And when the Hasmonean dynasty, this represents the Maccabees, prevailed against and defeated them, get ready, here we go. They made search and found only one cruse of oil, which lay with the seal of the high priest, but which contained sufficient for 1 day's lighting only. Yet a miracle was wrought therein, and they lit the lamp therewith for 8 days. The following year, these days were appointed a festival with the recital of Hallel, which are psalms of praise and thanksgiving. So there we have it, a completely new dimension to the holiday of Hanukkah. And I'm just going to take off screen for a moment. A completely new dimension to the holiday of Hanukkah. In some ways, a bold remaking of how the community would look at Hanukkah. And why would they do that? So perhaps, first of all, the reason why the Jewish community did not include the story of the Maccabees and Hanukkah in our most sacred text, the Hebrew Bible, is maybe the Jewish community didn't want to flaunt a military victory of the Jewish people over an empire in which they resided. Maybe they didn't want to stir the pot in future generations that the home empire in which the Jews lived should be threatened at all about the Jewish people. That could be why we left out the story, and it could be why the rabbis, in retelling the story, because it was out there, again, without the Catholic Church including in their canon our story of the Maccabees, maybe the holiday wouldn't be known at all. So the rabbis put a different dimension to Hanukkah, and they take away the military celebration and they bring a celebration of miracle, of faith and spirituality that, okay, one little cruse of oil, well, probably only going to last a night, but let's light it anyways. And that is where we get the miracle of lights. So let's take a look at the Hanukkah menorah as well. And I just happen to have one handy that I'm going to show in a moment. But when you think about 8 days of Hanukkah, there are different ways that we could actually light the candles. And I wanted to introduce, and this is actually just a wonderful insight into how Jews interpret a holiday and the tradition of what is called a machloket, a respectful disagreement. And this is something that's just a part of who we are as Jews. We look at different dimensions of things and we argue about it. We put forth a position. And then, of course, we make a decision how we're going to proceed. But in this case, and this again goes back to this series of books called the Talmud that were put together, collected about 1,500 years ago. And it offers, there are students from what's known as Beit Hillel, Beit Shammai, that make an argument that on the first day, one lights 8 candles, and from then on, one continues to decrease. So in other words, the first night of Hanukkah, you've got all 8 candles in it, and each night you take one away so that it decreases in the candles, and the last night you're left with one. That's one way of doing it. And then Beit Hillel, the students from the house of Hillel, say, no, on the first day, one lights one, and from then on, one continues to increase. So 1, 2, up to 8. You get the idea. So let me actually show you what that looks like. And I am going to show you this in a way that is oriented for the viewers. So in the middle, and it doesn't have to be in the middle, but it's always a little higher than the other candles. This is called the shamas. It is the Hebrew word for it's a helping candle that will light all of the others. And this is, so from right to left, as you are looking at it, you place, because the house of Hillel won the argument, and we light one each night progressively. So tonight, and we have this set up in the Linder household. My wife Nancy's got it all teed up for us. The first night, and we will then each night add a candle, second night, third night, fourth night, all the way up to the 8th night. And we light the most recent candle and then move back. So in this way, it's actually, I love that we do it this way, because both visually and metaphorically, each time we light a candle, we increase in light, we increase in holiness. I think it's a beautiful way of looking at this holiday. And I would also say that my favorite candle of all is the shamus, because without this candle, and again, this is not one of the 8 nights of Hanukkah, it without this, we don't light any of the candles. So this to me represents a couple of things. Number one, and I'm going to put this down for a moment, that without the help of one candle, without lighting the first candle, there is no illumination at all. And I think that's how we can look at ourselves in the world, what we can do in a simple act of kindness to actually bring light into the world in whatever way we do that, small acts of kindness. So that is a little bit on the Hanukkah menorah that's referred to as a Chanukia. And, and now just a couple more things. We read from the prophet, the rabbi selected the prophet Zechariah to read on the Shabbat, which will be this weekend of Hanukkah. And that prophet, of course, is in the Hebrew Bible. And the prophet reads, speaking, channeling God. Then he explained to me as follows: "This is the word of the Lord to Zerubbabel." And the prophet says, "Not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, said the Lord of hosts." So what did the rabbis intend for us to take away from the placement of this reading from the prophet Zechariah on the Shabbat of Hanukkah? First and foremost, we are encouraged to think about Hanukkah as more than a festival celebrating a miracle of lights, and more than a military victory over the Seleucid Greeks. It is also a festival that celebrates the victory of the human spirit and the universal desire for peace at most any cost. So the prophets, and I would say Judaism, and I think most faith traditions, in our particular voice, we have a universal message. And the rabbis want that universal message to be heard through the prophet, that together as a human community, we celebrate the victory of the human spirit for peace at most any cost. I think that's a wonderful message that the Islamic Speakers Bureau of Arizona is inviting a rabbi to talk about our holiday of Hanukkah, but a shared message for all of us. Finally, and we're going to end with a little bit of fun here. There is a tradition that we play games on Hanukkah. Well, and also we eat. We eat delicious fried food because you've got oil that is at the heart of the miracle, thanks to the rabbi's contribution to this holiday. It's a miracle of lights lasting for 8 days. Oil. So what do we do with oil? We make potato latkes. We make delicious fried food potato latkes, and we eat sufganiyot, the Hebrew word for donuts. So good fried food on Hanukkah. for 8 days. And then we play games, one of which is with a dreidel. We spin the dreidel, and there are 4 letters on each side of the dreidel. And so you have a nun, a hey, a shin, and a gimel, excuse me. And it spells out the phrase Nes Gadol Haya Sham. A great miracle happened there. There being, if you're outside of Israel, everybody refers to where the miracle happened, which was in Israel, in Jerusalem, again in the rededication of the temple. And we put those letters on the dreidel, and this is my wife Nancy decorates our house each year and pulls out. These are son made when he was, I think, in the preschool at our temple in Buffalo, New York, many, many moons ago. So here is a dreidel. And here in the inside of a Jewish star is a dreidel as well. Tough to see the letters. That's a hey and that's a shin. But it symbolizes this game that we play, and we spin it, and depending on which letter it lands on, we exchange chocolate coins, because again, why not bring some more sweets and joy into the holiday? So that is the story in a nutshell of the holiday of Hanukkah. Again, just emphasizing the first battle for religious freedom, that we don't take for granted our religious freedom as Americans today, and supporting one another, that we can observe our faiths in the particular ways that we do. And here is a last piece before I say goodbye, that focuses on this Hebrew word nes, which is miracle. Again, on the dreidel, nes, a great miracle. Nes Gadol, great miracle happened there. So let's listen to these young men sing about this nes.
Because we're all about that nace, no oil. We're all about that nace, no oil. We're all about that nace, no oil. We're all about that nace, nace. Yeah, it's pretty clear. The Maccabees were few, they wouldn't take it, being told what to do. They wanted freedom that we today embrace, and all the rights to pray in all the right places. The ancient magazines, they put the Greeks on top, oppressed the Jewish state. They had to be stopped. The Maccabees had faith, they wouldn't give it up. Our holiday is so much more than spinning plastic tops. Yeah, my mama, she told me it's not about the food you fry. Faith, family, freedom, we celebrate for a night. Spin on the dreidel. The latkes and dreidels and presents are all good fun. But if that's all you do, then your holiday's just begun. Because we're all about that nace, no oil. We're all about that nace, no oil. We're all about that nace, no oil. We're all about that nace, Hey, we took the temple back. One day of oil burned much more than that. And now we celebrate by eating fat. But we're here to tell you that our holiday is so much more than spinning plastic tops. Yeah, my mommy, she told me it's not about the food we fry. Hey, fun. But if that's all you do, then your holiday's just begun. Because you know we're all about that nace, no oil. We're all about that nace, no oil. We're all about that nace, no oil. We're all about that nace, You know we're all about that nace, oil. All about that nace, no oil. All about that nace, oil. All about that nace,
Kind of fun, huh? Kind of fun. So we will conclude this opportunity, and so grateful again, Azra Hussein, for inviting me to share our Hanukkah story, the evolution of a miracle, and to end with, again, this Shamas candle. It is for our people many years ago in the temple as our story evolved, that without the faith, that thinking of even the unimaginable, of lighting a light that's going to last for more than it should reasonably last, this one that's going to last for 8 nights, believe in ourselves and what we can do, that each one of our acts of bringing love and peace and kindness in the world, it multiplies beyond what we can imagine, and it just takes us to have the faith of lighting. God bless each and every one of you. And whatever you're celebrating over this month of December, may it bring joy and peace, and grateful that we are all in this together. Oh, by the way, my tie, there are the dreidels. Wanted you to see, and there are the chocolate coins. Can't wait to light it tonight. I'll be thinking of each of you.
Thank you, Rabbi, and thank you to all who were able to join us this evening. ISBA is a non-profit organization and depends on financial support from the community. Please help us bring more programs like the one you experienced tonight by donating generously to ISBA. We will post our 2021 schedule for Ilm Circles and our other programs on our website and at our Facebook page by the 3rd week of December. Until then, on behalf of all of us at ISBA, I want to wish all those who celebrate a happy Hanukkah, a Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. Stay safe and healthy. Good evening.